Hey folks, it's us, podcasting wonderkins John Bishop and Lucas Southworth.
Although this is a podcast about cars, it is not age appropriate for the target demographic of these films, as we usually end up talking about the reproductive organs of Lightning McQueen.
Alright, now let's take a look under the hood.
Hello and welcome to the Kachat, the only podcast brave enough to ask the question, hey, what's up with cars? But this time it's planes. I'm John Bishop.
And I'm Lucas Southworth. That's right, we did watch Planes. Again, that's what we did for this one.
And it was still not good.
Yeah, like I may have built up how bad it was a little bit in my head, which I sort of figured I did. Like, I don't know. It's a movie, but it's not good. It's worse. I still maintain it's the worst of all five of them for sure. It's very bad, and I wish we didn't watch it. But also, I don't because I understand that. I don't know if anyone should have to watch it. It's the two of us, you know.
Mm-hmm. Just the two of us.
We can make it if we try.
So, I'm going to present my thesis for the following opinions and reviews that I may or may not give. And
Okay.
my thesis is, this movie, as a lot of movies, like this is generally a true statement, unfortunately, but this movie really exemplifies the ideal of this was written by very successful people.
Yeah.
Who don't understand that success is not, I tried hard until I won.
Yeah.
I wanted to go further and say this movie was written by successful straight white men. But
yeah.
even if that's possibly true, like, I think focusing on the thing that irked me the most is how obvious it is that this is just successful people. And by successful, I do not mean people who tried until they succeeded. I mean people who, by some means, have achieved what many would regard as success. Whether it be someone handed them a bunch of money or they were born with money, I'm not saying necessarily, but definitely has that vibe.
Yeah, and I gotta imagine it was written also, I'll add another thing, by folks who aren't from a rural area or a farming community, because there's a lot of that specifically, which they don't get right neither.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the same problem we've always had with it. They do this whole thing. We're in the episode now. We'll talk about the specific wacky things we notice that have implications on the cars first. But we got to do this because we don't like planes.
Yeah.
They tell this whole story about a crop duster who makes it, who, despite his limitation, makes it. And that's the story they want to tell. But the story they tell is of a crop duster that changes absolutely everything about himself, who is in no way still has any part of his original identity intact, who literally was just given a bunch of equipment that made him physically faster. And oh yeah, and then he won the race. Also, that he still shouldn't have been able to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exemplified so strongly by the scene in which the faster plane goes faster and he
Yep.
can't keep up, and then he just hard works it up until he pushes past his fear and then does the thing that the other faster plane should have already been doing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I again, I will always say, like with this and with the failures that we discussed with Cars 3's plot, I can sort of respect the plot they were going for, but they just sort of missed the mark a lot. And same with my problems with Planes, Fire, and Rescue that we will almost certainly discuss in 5 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he is a crop duster who is bad at crop dusting, not because he's not trying, but because he doesn't care about it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
like, the idea is follow your passion because that is what you will be good at. And sure, that's a nice message. And there's a point at which Dottie says something along the lines of, if you had listened to me, I would never forgive myself because she tells him not to race because it's dangerous to his body. And here's a real dangerous message that this film pushes a lot.
Yeah.
You do not need to change everything about yourself through surgery or other means to achieve your dreams, because that is extremely unhealthy. And if it were true, then your dreams are probably unhealthy. And like I don't know, there's going to be exceptions to every rule. But I think that a movie that is pushing the agenda of if you want to race, you got to think like a racer, and thinking like a racer in this movie almost explicitly is chop off your crop duster, get surgery to look different because your performance will be enhanced through alterations that other people have to perform on you. And that was regarded as a very good thing that happened in the movie.
Yeah, like the way they treat his sprayer, as they call it, it sets up so much of like an easy story beat of no, he wants to keep it because it's a part of him, it's part of his identity. And
Mm-hmm.
like they set it up like that right until they don't. Right until our buddy Franz slash Von Fleeblblobble just comes and says, "Hey, you should chop that thing off, man." Is like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't need this thing.
Yep. And I get that it's hard to do the message the right way because it's planes instead of people. But if we're going for his dream is to be an athlete, essentially it's a race. And this is another thing I want to harp on is the translation cannot work. Uh, if you think of it as a person, this is a person removing something from your body surgically because plane. In the real world, the good, healthy analog is if you want to be a really fast sprinter and you've got like 10 extra pounds, or you've got like a lot of hair and a very, like, I don't know, drag heavy haircut, hairstyle, or anything, you might want to wear a cap to reduce drag or lose those 10 pounds through diet and exercise so that you won't have as much weight to carry and you can push yourself faster. But the two things he does to get faster earlier on is he has surgery twice. He has his engine by someone else. He has the torque increased on it. He doesn't work hard for that. He has surgery. Again, he does not work hard to become faster. Someone surgically alters him to make him faster. And then the chopping off that part of him, it's even worse because the reason he has, I'm guessing, like liposuction in this case, is he only does it because a person is a fan of him. He does it for the fans. He does it for fame.
Yeah, and they do, to their limited credit, also show him training, but that is not to increase his speed. That's to increase his skill.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. You're absolutely right that the issue is they're planes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's a limiting thing that they have to work with. But like because they're planes, they can't really just have him like push his mechanics and make them better and stronger through exercise. But like then that sends such a weird message of like, he's just, oh, don't worry, I just made his engine better,
Yep.
so now he's faster.
And the other time I want to mention that it really can't translate because people to planes doesn't work. In the final race, or the final bit of the race, his his good old friend, the extremely old veteran, comes to save the day. This man, if he's a human, I want you to imagine this as they're running a race, like a multi-stage race with a bunch of different types of racing, and this is like the final stretch of it. and two humans are just running on a track, and then all of a sudden, a 70-plus-year-old man, a veteran, who has not walked for 50 plus years, just runs onto the track because three human racers are beating you up. This 70-plus-year-old man runs onto the track, and no one cares because there's no cameras there, because, of course. And this old man starts punching these youngins who are punching you. And then this man, who, again, has not walked in 50 plus years,
Yeah.
is doing a good job beating up the youngsters. And then he gets distracted because he's talking to you, his protege. And then the world famous racer just runs up behind him and shanks him in the leg. And and then everything just goes on. Two of the humans have been tripped up and are now like hurt and can't continue the race. Your friend, the old veteran, has been stabbed in the leg, and you and the guy who just stabbed someone are just gonna run to finish that race.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, and like, again, to give them the tiniest bit of credit, we are the one assigning human traits to it, but I got to imagine everyone who watches the movie does that. Like, it's called personification for a reason. It's making things into a person.
Hmm.
So, like, that's just people's default, you know?
And it really drives home. Yeah, being a vehicle in this world, it's not a physical thing in the Planes movies. It's just not, because if it were a body physical thing, that man would not be able to run.
Yeah.
Maybe he could get up because he's got PTSD that prevents him from walking. Maybe he'd be able to get up. Maybe he'd be able to walk. But sprinting to catch up to three of the world's fastest planes
Yeah.
and then fist fight them. What?
Yeah.
And it really drives home the whole, this is a 50-plus-year-old man, conservative man, telling the story, because it's extremely pro veteran, which, if you have served the country, I'm not saying anyone should be against you. I'm saying good for you. I'm proud of you. I don't know how to say, I respect you and all that. But there's this strange, everyone should want to be this man,
Yeah.
and not everyone is suited for that. And making Dusty Crophopper, a farmer who becomes a racer, into an honorary member of the Jolly Ranchers, I would say seems a bit disrespectful to the actual people who serve. And the reason they did it is because of a veteran who, I don't know how to put this delicately, but maybe accidentally was stealing valor.
No, yeah, yeah. Um, I'll say my issues with this movie's tone would be summed up with like, I'm fine with it being pro veteran, but man, it's pretty pro military too. And like
Yeah,
that's where I get a little dicey with it.
that's what was tripping me up, because like pro veteran, good.
Yes.
Pro military, not good. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm anti military, but I'm very anti the way America approaches military.
Yes. And the way that the American military and specifically the CIA often pays movies to be very pro military.
Hmm.
It's like, as a person from Kentucky, I'll tell you, I've always had to very much distinguish like, hey, I am very much pro coal miner, very much anti coal. You
Hmm.
know, like that's a distinction I've had to make my entire life, but it's very similar to the one I feel that we have to make with this one.
Yep. I went to the Southern Lights, and then I hear the announcement, uh, the Southern Lights are sponsored by Friends of Coal.
Friends of Coal has pissed me off for longer than I can remember.
And I was just getting this like irritated voice in my head, like, "Oh, come on, I'm not a friend of Colt." And then someone behind me, a guy I'm guessing has a lot of similarities to me, eventually like just comes up with, it's a non-renewable resource that's killing the environment. We need to get rid of it anyway." And I was just like, I mean, no one needed to say it, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah,
Uh,
just
and the way the coal industry treats the people who work in the coal industry is terrible. All right,
But
but yeah, so this movie is let's go for it. Is pro-military in a very unhealthy way.
yeah,
And it's pro if you try hard, you will succeed in an extremely unhealthy, very conservative way. And I used to be that sort of conservative. I used to think that if you worked hard, no matter who you were, where you were in life, what you did, as long as you were working hard, you would succeed. And then I learned about wealth disparity
yeah,
and the very hard to hear about because no one wants to acknowledge that it's real in Kentucky when you're growing up. Racism and sexism actively prevent you from succeeding in a lot of ways. And
mhm,
it's ridiculous seeing this movie and knowing that the story is a hey, it's a I don't know much about these athletes, but a Jesse Owens, a Jackie Robinson. That is who Dusty Crophopper is. And he's voiced by a successful old white man
it's
who famously dates like barely not a teenager girls at the age of 50. It's gross.
yeah. Dane
And
Cook's wild.
hey, maybe maybe that's because he's seeking someone to match his level of maturity.
Yeah,
Maybe that was a rude dig for me to say. But also, they're barely not kids.
yeah.
You're
Cut that
creepy.
out. Yeah, Dane Cook is no good. Uh, last thing I'll say, and then we should probably talk about wacky car stuff. But just to echo John's point, the phrase "pull yourself up by your bootstraps" is literally, it used to mean something that is impossible to do. You physically cannot pull yourself up from your bootstraps because they are attached to you. It's not something that's possible.
If
Uh,
you want some context, pull yourself up by your feet.
yeah, like you
Grab your
can.
feet and get up. Like go up your whole body by pulling.
Yeah.
That's the the serious advice that this movie is giving you. Because anytime he wants to succeed and he doesn't, it's someone else's fault.
Mhm.
And through just trying harder, he succeeds. And if you look at the movie, the reason he succeeds is because everyone in front of him isn't trying hard enough.
Yeah. But I'm sure we're going to spend the whole episode coming back to our problems with this movie. But let's talk about some wacky stuff, John. Like, and why do the Jets wear helmets?
Uniform.
I mean, I guess.
Yep, uniform.
Yeah, they're a bunch of Jets. They wear little flight helmets. I gotta imagine not many of you watched Planes, which I respect that decision. But there are a bunch of Jets, and only some of them wear flight helmets. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them don't. And it
Uh, wait, shoot. Skipper?
Skipper doesn't, and then just some of the Jets on like the Fleisenhauer don't wear them.
Well, you don't need
Like,
your helmet when you're not flying.
okay, but I don't know. It just they have windshields, you
Okay.
know?
And
And
why did the guy who made the call to save Dusty's life have on aviators?
yeah, and just the biggest phone I've ever seen, if we're thinking of the same guy. Yeah, I don't know, man. They okay, let's we it's not the podcast does not say wacky cars things, it's explain wacky cars things. So, they have the helmet because
Uniform.
yep, the uniform. You did it, John.
It's your flight uniform. You have to wear your proper PPE.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what it would do to a jet if it crashed. How it would help, but hey, maybe it does. Maybe they got safety tech I've never even dreamed of.
It's one of those helmets that is actually a bunch of airbags stuffed into a helmet.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And it'll save them.
Cool. My next big thing, and this will come back to us critiquing the movie, but it's my next note. Dottie lists a big list of mechanical failures that will happen if Dusty pushes himself too hard and goes too fast. So,
Yeah, but you just got to work hard.
why didn't they happen?
They did.
They did?
Yeah. He fell into the ocean.
He fell into the ocean because he ran into the wave because he wouldn't take the sage advice of just fly higher, you little idiot.
Hmm.
So,
And that wasn't his fault. He was distressed because the old man lied to him.
I mean, and I know what you're doing. I understand the joke and the reason you're telling it. But again, a mechanic said, "Hey, your wings will break off if you do this, and your engine will explode."
Hmm.
And I guess we could point to Planes Fire and Rescue.
We can
Maybe.
point to both movies. His body could not handle a lot of the extremes. He had to have the crop duster chopped off. He eventually had his wings just entirely replaced. He had a lot of outer work redone. Like his entire design was altered significantly. And sure, it was due to a crash and not due to wear, but he was not built for it. And then he was rebuilt for it. And even still, his internals couldn't handle it. He blew a gasket very early on in the movie. And then in the next movie, he suffers the consequences of his heart giving out because he's not built for it. He suffers a lot of consequences. And one of the things is he doesn't have an internal antenna that is actually good for this whole thing. And that is why it was easy for him to be knocked to the side, and then he was going to die because he was just out in the ocean because again he was not built for it. And then through the gift of a bunch of money's worth of parts, since he was a hard worker and a good guy, everything worked out for him because that's how things work for
for for Dusty at
wealthy
least.
wealthy white people, wealthy
Yeah,
white men.
it's what they're used to, I suppose.
And they keep harping on, oh well, he's a crop duster, he's a crop duster. Okay, yeah, but also he's got so much support, so much support.
Yeah, they keep coming back to the announcers would keep saying like, and he's the first ever crop duster to compete in this, and he's the first crop duster to win the whole thing. Spoiler alert: he does win the whole thing.
Hmm.
But like, I don't know, that felt weird to me just because of the massive variety of different types of planes that there are in the world. Like, it felt like it should be he's the first like non-racing plane as opposed to specifically crop duster. I don't know. It's not a big point, but it just felt like needlessly specific and like there he was probably also the first non-racing plane to do it.
And this is frustrating because this movie, it keeps calling him the crop duster because he's supposed to be a minority, but nothing about the situation is actual to what that would have represented. There
Yeah,
is a racist, but that racist is a he's just a rich dude with a knife on his face, I guess, and two lackeys who are also really good at racing and just are his lackeys for no reason.
yeah, like I don't know. It just feels like we often talk about how the Wings Around the World race is just nonsensical because it is.
Hmm.
It's impossible to follow and doesn't make a lick of sense. Dusty was seemingly like, I don't know, an hour behind the other competitors
I
at the
think two.
beginning in the
Oh,
first
well,
leg.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
I don't know if any of those planes would have
and
had enough fuel to make that leg of the first one, but even if they did, it would have had to have been at the correct altitude, which he did not do.
yeah,
He just blatantly broke the laws of physics by working hard. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps in ways that are not possible.
it just seems like that it should have been over from that first leg, you know?
Hmm.
Like he did a horrible, horrible job. So, however, the race is structured should mean like, oh, you got here like an hour or so after everyone else, then you start an hour or so after everyone else on the other legs, and like that's really significant time to make up. Like he shouldn't be able to just
No,
make it up like
you
he
just got to
does.
work hard.
No, and I understand. Again,
You just got to
that's
work
our
hard.
whole thing with Dusty Crop Opera is If he can believe he can do it, he can do it, and that's why he's the second most powerful character in the Cars verse. Spoiler for our episode that we did about that.
Oh,
But
but like also he was an hour behind and then was just all of a sudden in the right place at the right time to save Bulldog's life.
yeah,
And then he
yeah,
did,
like
and it still didn't hurt his racing time because all he had to do was try hard because all of the other planes were, I guess, just taking it easy.
I guess, like I don't know, it just it. And I listen. I am a big proponent of like, hey, just because you don't like a movie doesn't mean it's bad, especially with kids' movies, because like it wasn't made for John and I. You know, it was made for children, and
Mm-hmm.
I bet a lot of kids really liked this movie, and that's great. But like, man, I know it's a children's movie about talking planes, but it should have some internal logic to it, right? Like a little.
See, my problems, like, yeah, the logic is bad, but my problems with this are the same as the problems I had when I was trying to explain to my coworker why I was frustrated that I started using a website that is designed to teach you about forging. I was using the Forging University on it, and I was complaining for a little bit. I took a test after I reviewed material, and the test, some of the answers I gave were right. And it marked them as wrong because another part of the answer might have also been true, or a different answer was true, or in a case or two, they were just wrong. They got the answer wrong, and I had to input the wrong answer to get it right. And I was just frustrated with this system, and I was complaining about it. And the coworker's like, "Well, then it's just not for you." I'm like, "What do you mean? It's specifically for people who are trying to learn. If it's wrong, that means it's bad. And sure, you can just say, well, then don't use it. But this is a problem. This is an educational tool that is wrong and requires you to be wrong to get it right. And that is the opposite of what it should be doing. And an educational tool that teaches you incorrectly is not neutral. It's actively bad. It is worse than nothing. And this is a kids
Yeah.
movie that teaches you that all you have to do is try and you will succeed at whatever it is you're trying at as long as it's your dream. Because that is true sometimes, but
Yeah.
it is not always true. And it is important to know that you need to figure out a way to be happy whether or not it's the thing you thought you were meant to do.
Like, I'd say my big issue with it is like, it's a message that's possible to do right. Like, there are so many movies that do it and do it right. But like my thing is like it's not even that Dusty tries harder than anyone else. It's just that he wants it more than anyone else. He doesn't really seem to try harder than anyone else to me, you know? And like it is important to like say, hey, sometimes hard work doesn't pay off. Like that's the one redeeming thing about the Monsters University movie is it has an incredibly mature message of like, hey, Mike works harder than anyone else to be a scare, but he just can't do it. It's just he physically can't do it, and sometimes you have to change and adapt. But like this one is even worse than movies that are like, "Hey, working hard will get you there." It's just like, "Hey, if you want it, you'll get it."
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't show. It doesn't spend a lot of its runtime showing Dusty training and working and caring and like learning about the sport more than anyone else. He was using an Air Racing for Dummies book at the beginning of it. He
And then he
just
graduated to having a person who was in the Navy teach him how to race, despite that person never having been a racer.
yeah, like again, there's a way to do like, hey, work hard and maybe you'll get it movies. This isn't that. He doesn't work that hard. He just gets it.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. There are movies that, well, there is a way to do this right. And the movie that does is Soul. It's a
Yeah.
movie in which a man works hard and achieves his goal or dream, and it still teaches you the healthy way to approach and to think about everything, because he realizes that the way he was approaching it, by just trying hard until he succeeded and putting everything else at the wayside, was extremely unhealthy for him. He learned that even succeeding wasn't what he thought it would be. And he, in the end, achieves his dream, his goal, and he learns that it's not your purpose. Your spark is not this ethereal what you're meant to do. It's about doing what you love and doing it the healthy and right way. You can create music, you can be a racer, and sometimes it's not going to look like what you think it is, and sometimes it's going to become something completely different from that, but still involve it. Like, he learned that he loves music, and that doesn't mean he has to perform it. It just means he has to create music and to help create music and to help others experience it. It was all about wanting something and going after it, achieving it, but it did everything in a healthy way by showing you that unhealthy behaviors are unhealthy. And what does Dusty do? He does extremely unhealthy things constantly until he wins.
Yeah, like I agree. This is not it doesn't have a good message. It just doesn't. But they do have a show about the 10 worst air crashes of all time, which does seem just incredibly grotesque. So you want to talk about that?
Lucas, that's a real thing.
I know, but like it seems like it was played in the way of like the Sports Center, not top 10. Up, looks like this guy ran into another one and fumbled the ball. When like usually these like worst crashes are at least treated with a bit more gravity, you know?
It
Like a
really
little bit.
depends. Uh,
I know.
Basically, in our world, in our human world, the rule is it's funny so long as no one died.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better and it's funny as long as no one got hurt, but
Yeah.
for an unfortunate amount of the time, it's funny as long as no one died. And that applies to any given thing, no matter the danger, it would seem. There's, I forget what the show is called, but there's a Rob and Big. One of them, I'm guessing Rob is the host of it. Ridiculousness? I don't know.
Sure.
But they've got an entire segment that's just, let's watch people suffer and laugh at them. Tosh Point oh.
Yeah.
The whole premise behind one of their bigger segments is, oh yeah, we're gonna give you a chance to do it again, but better. And the whole time we're gonna be laughing about how bad it was the first time. And there's just straight up a look at how crazy these crashes is. Like, that's a thing that's on a lot of shows. That's a thing that might even be its own show. We just laugh so long as we have the like TV promise of, yeah, no one died. Because if someone died, black and white photo, still image, serious soundtrack, and it's just you play the same footage.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It just felt weird, especially in a kids movie, and especially when it's like, as we always say, it's their bodies. So watching them crash is like watching a person like not just like get hit in the balls on America's Funniest Home Videos, but like break all the bones in their body and like you see the bones poking out and stuff. And like it felt weird. I agree with you though that it's a bit too present in our world though.
Yep. Some people are real into shouting food, which
Yeah.
it makes me real uncomfortable.
Do you have a wacky cars thing, or did you just come in with like I just want to bash on this stupid movie that we both hate?
So they were checking out uh uh FluTube on their
They were.
SkyPad, bro.
They were.
Don't
Which how do
worry
you,
though, when he smashed it, they're gonna come out with another one soon because this movie was written by wealthy people who don't value other people's items.
that's true. How do you think they operate it if not with their wheels that immediately smash them, though?
Uh Cheap and easy answer, they're psychic.
Yeah.
Uh
You know, the easy answer. There's like, you're right, though.
I've talked many times about how one of their
No.
hands, the answer must be that they're psychic.
Yeah.
Other than that, I guess maybe eye tracking and voice commands. Like
Yeah,
with
that could work.
what is it?
Okay.
With like VR, if you have like a phone, put it in a simple like $10 thing that's a VR setup, you sometimes for controls you just look in a certain direction for a period of time and it will accept that as like a button click. So it's probably just like some sort of facial recognition or eye tracking.
Yeah. John, what was the point of him going by strut jet stream for like 10 minutes of the movie and then it just wasn't a thing and it wasn't important?
Uh,
Was it
so
just a
so
joke?
big so big dumb friend can be big dumb friend.
Yeah, okay, I guess. It just
So
wasn't funny.
trope
And
can be
like,
met. This movie's not about
eh,
being funny. It's about meeting a checklist of tropes.
yeah, like we talk about a lot about like how the message doesn't work. Also, this is a deeply unfunny movie. And again, I bet there are some kids who loved it. And I'm not going to take that away from them. But man, as an adult man watching this movie, I maybe laughed twice.
Now,
Maybe.
me, I'm willing to take that from those kids because, hey, kids, do not enjoy this movie because if you get the wrong ideas about how to live and how success works, it's gonna mess you up down the road. This movie's not
Yeah,
funny and it objectifies everyone and
that's
it
true.
really does not have healthy values or really anything.
Yeah, the boy planes keep looking at the girl planes butts, I guess, in this one, which we
Yep.
talked about the first time, I remember,
Mm-hmm.
but it made me just as uncomfortable this time.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Okay. There's a forklift, a British forklift, and he has a teacup and a tea bag. That was one of the things. I'm so warped by these stupid movies. That was probably one of the things that made me laugh. Just that the forklift had a teacup and a tea bag that he was dipping in it. I was like, ah, that's silly. He's gonna break that. He's too mechanical and fast for that piece of porcelain.
I don't think the warping comes from these movies. I think the warping comes from talking about these movies for well over 100 hours.
No, that's a better way to put it. How'd they get John Cleese to do this, John? How'd they get co-founder of Monty
Monty Python.
Python to be Bulldog in this movie? Who Liz watched this one on and off with me, was her favorite character, so I'll give him that. He's probably mine too. He's kind of fun. I don't know. No, Dottie's my
Well,
favorite.
it has
Yeah.
come to my attention that John Cleese is, well, not precisely the conservative ideal, more so than I would have figured. He
Ah, man, for
is,
real?
yeah, he's real anti cancel culture. He's real, just work hard and you will succeed because a very successful white man, have have done it.
Okay, well, I haven't looked at that, but I believe you. So, yeah, it's good that John Cleese is in this bad movie. All those planes taken off at the same time at the beginning seems wildly dangerous.
Yep, 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 yep. I
That again, there's no like. So what does that mean about the cars first? It means that it means it
I mean,
seems
that's
really
true for
dangerous.
NASCAR too. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking,
Okay. Yeah.
this is just a bunch of really heavy metal, and with planes, they're so delicate. Even if they're not delicate, they're still delicate. And it's just a scary idea thinking, oh, they're all that close. Yeah, if I were racing planes, I'd have them start like a mile apart on the same line and just have them go the same distance. Yeah, everything's scary in this world. Like that, what is it, Radial G, where he nearly clips his opponent that he's racing. I'm just like, no,
Yeah.
you just put both of your lives in danger for a race. Don't do that.
Like they showed how you should do a plane race if you wanted to do that for some reason at in the qualifiers. Like it should be a time trial.
Hmm.
Like they should all go separately. But no,
And the obstacles should not be mountains. They should be inflatables that tear easily so they don't destroy the plane.
which I gotta imagine, like they took that from real like plane agility courses and stuff. Like that seemed like real enough that they did some research. That
Hmm.
part, but the wings around the world again, it's just absolutely nonsense. It's nonsensical.
Yep. And the idea that a crop duster and a indoor racing plane, that
Yeah.
those two could compete with vehicles designed for this sort of race, I mean, I support the idea of don't let people put you in a box, but there's something to be said about if you're making a movie about something that is mechanical, specs are specs. Like, then don't make the movie about planes, make it about people flying planes. Don't make the movie Cars about cars, make it about people racing cars. They didn't need to be planes, they didn't need to be cars. They just were, because
Yeah.
toys and gimmick.
Yeah. Do you have something you want me to just keep tearing into this one?
It was really upsetting watching this movie and
Yes.
having little moments
Oh.
where it was like, oh, you can tell that this movie is technically crafted. Like, they don't have super long, awkward pauses. They don't have really awkward, like, transitions. They don't have, like, just, oh, this was clearly an amateur. This was a professionally made bad movie.
Yeah, and I'll say like I feel like I noticed a little bit of an animation dip, like not a huge one, but like it. I watched it and I was like, this doesn't necessarily seem Pixar quality, and that's because it's made by Disney Toon Studios, a studio that no longer exists.
But then the second one, notable improvement in quality,
No, yeah,
even though it was made at pretty much the same time.
yeah, it was made almost immediately after the first one, which is wild.
I'm pretty sure they were made in tandem,
Oh, really?
but
Okay.
one was just, they had another year to finish it.
Mm. John, okay. I feel like we could spend some time on this one. Old Yeller exists, and it is definitely about a dog.
And they still did kill the dog.
Yeah, they still kill the dog in Cars slash Plane Old Yeller.
And better or worse, it was a recent sort of movie or something. Because let's face it, spoiler alert does not apply to a movie that is well over 20 years old.
I think they're probably just stupid, so they said spoiler alert.
Yeah, and if you're wondering, they do make sure you know that there's one stupid twin, because of course they're going to make you know that.
Oh yeah, there's always a stupid twin, but a lot of the time, and we don't have a ton of evidence of just animals in the Cars verse. Like you got the tractors, and you got Frank, the combine guy, and like a few others.
Mm-hmm.
No, most of the time when they refer to them, they don't call the tractors cows. They call them
Mm-hmm.
tractors,
Yep.
which makes me think: is Old Yeller the dog just like a dog?
Maybe, but there's also a chance that there's a small vehicle that is referred to as a dog.
Yeah, for sure. Because we do, and I know every time we talk about dogs, we bring up Mia and Tia and Rescue Squad Mater, but
Mm-hmm.
it's imprinted on our minds, maybe even our retinas. Uh, and
Every time I close my eyes, I see this.
yeah, I should go to the doctor about that. It's probably like a medical thing. But
Yeah, and it is probably because when I watched that, the screen that I was watching it on did explode
oh yeah,
right
yeah.
at that scene.
For me, I just paused it and just. Have you ever seen Clockwork Orange?
Ah, I have not, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
The
I've seen
weird
that
thing,
part of it.
yeah, the weird things that hold his eyes open. I went ahead and applied those, and just stared at him because it felt like what I should do after watching that.
Hmm.
But anyway, in
I should
rescue,
know that this sort of horrible thing exists.
I can't forget. I have to be able to identify it on sight. But yes, in Rescue Squad Mater, Mia and Tia are Dalmatians, and they just look like Mia and Tia, but with a Dalmatian paint job.
Hmm.
So like, I guess, I guess that dogs could just be cars that have a general like dog paint job, and they're probably smaller. Maybe Mia and Tia were giant dogs. Who could say?
So maybe this, I don't, this, you may want to cut this later.
Sure.
Maybe dogs are just, in the Cars universe, furries whose dreams came true.
Oh, that's nice.
The reason you may want to get rid of that is that does mean that it's the dog in Old Yeller was also that.
Oh, that's no good. I
Yep.
think we can keep it because we're sad that the furry died.
Yeah.
Uh, but this will. I don't know. We're talking about it. Do furries want to be dogs, or do they want to be furries, who are people dressed like dogs? John, I'm sure you know.
For me, it's a bit of both.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Now, for me, I mean how I'm defining it,
Okay.
not
Okay.
uh, in my furry journey.
I don't know. If any of you are or know a furry, let us know. Okay. I already asked how do they operate the iPad. I don't know. I stopped taking as many notes towards the end because I was mad that I was watching planes. Uh, do we want to talk about how easily they could have killed each other in that little fight they had at the end? Like
Um,
it's no different than Chick Hicks doing it. I guess it's very different. They're planes and they're in the air and going much faster and much more fragile.
yep. Uh,
So yeah,
we could talk about that, or we could talk about the fact that he straight up admitted that the reason his specific propeller is called what it is because it's good at cutting people.
yeah. What was it called again? Do you
Sky
remember?
Slicer.
Sky Slicer. Yeah.
Maybe it's, oh, it's so sharp it can cut the sky, but he shanked a man with his face knives and then immediately said that's why they called them Sky Slicers, because they're good at cutting veterans.
that's that specifically. Uh,
Can we
yeah.
just
You know,
focus on how so many of these movies have this idea that a villain has to be just so blatantly evil? You
I
can't
mean,
half-ass villainy. Even the guy who was just a dick, good old fashioned Jackson Storm, he couldn't just be a dick. At the end, he had to assault and try to maybe maim or kill a fellow racer because bad guys have to be evil. They can't just be your opposition.
I mean, I do agree with that, but like, it wasn't just them who could have killed Dusty and Skipper.
Oh,
Like the
so many
maneuver,
times people could have died. Dusty nearly killed himself and another racer. Yeah.
like they got improbably lodged in a small cavern, a small crevice, when what should have happened is their parts would scatter across the cavern walls. Like
They weren't
that,
that close and perfectly sized, and best case, they lose like their landing gear.
and like Dusty didn't know. He didn't know they would get wedged there. Like that's what felt so weird to me about that one is not our antagonists going full, well, I guess we got to kill him, as although that did feel a little weird. What it was more Skipper shouting out to Dusty basically instructions on how to kill him. It felt
Use the
very much,
rocks.
it felt very much, kill them, Dusty, kill them for me, do this for me, your Skipper. And like
No,
I,
no. What they do is their whole logic is put them in a position to where they will technically be responsible for their own death. Dusty's advice, use the rocks, was hey, get them to be in a maneuverable situation where your agility will save your life and their lack of maneuverability will end their life. And then it's their fault that they're dead.
yeah, I don't know. It felt. I agree with you that the villains going full villains is a bit eye rolly at this point, but I was more taken by our protagonists going full villains at the end.
Well, say what you will about this movie, but it is probably the only movie I can think of where it is a movie specifically for children. And there is a scene where you watch a dozen people get shot to death and explode and catch on fire, and a man has to deal with his PTSD for half a century.
Yeah, it's hard not to talk about that scene, even though we've talked quite a bit about it.
Those are
It's
blatantly guns, and those people get shot to death.
and
And it's a lot of people, and you see them get shot to death.
it's the same thing I was saying about how the crashes are worse because the planes are their bodies.
Hmm.
Like there are lots of scenes, and I remember talking about this in the first episode we did about this, so I will go quickly. But like, there are lots of scenes in movies where faceless people in planes tragically are shot down, but we don't see them. You know, like that's why the stormtroopers wear the stormtrooper helmets, so we don't feel bad when Han and Chewie shoot 100 of them and kill 100 people. Like the fact that they put the face on the plane and like, hey, this is a guy, and his wing, which is part of his body, just got shot off, and he is going to plunge to his death in the cold Pacific Ocean. Like feels just, and I know it's not new to say, it just feels so tonally wild to include in this movie. Why'd they do it, John? Why did they
Be-
do it? Well,
because
okay,
they
why did they
could.
do it? Because no one told them, hey, maybe we don't do this. What if we didn't do this instead?
But what if, instead
Yeah,
of that, we make children watch men and women be shot to death, and then those who survive burn to death or drowned?
and like I don't know, we don't have anything new to say about it, and I know that. It's just you just got to know that in the movie Planes there is a I don't know minute or two long flashback to World War II where a bunch of living planes get shot to death. Honestly, that is the part I wouldn't recommend watching this whole movie because even in terms of like Cars versus lore, it's not that good. Besides this scene, if you want Cars versus lore, just Google Planes World War II scene and just watch that.
Yeah.
The plane wears lipstick, the French Canadian one.
Mm-hmm. And as with, you know, the foreign racer women of this film, she is very sexualized. And as such, she has to be a creature designed to be chased and or to chase, and she does both.
She sure does. And I remember Liz said what I'm sure I was thinking, but I guess I didn't think on the surface because I was like, it's just a bad movie. El Chup was chasing her the whole movie, and she was like, "I am not having this. You suck, and I don't like you." And he tried serenading her to like very quickly with a radio,
Mm-hmm.
and then Dusty said, "No, no, no. You need a mariachi band." Which, a real quick diversion to this, our episode on the forklifts did make me realize that he did find a mariachi band in Shanghai, China,
Mm-hmm.
which A plus stuff. Good, gotta
Of
require a
course.
lot of effort.
Yep.
But then he keeps singing that he's a love machine, and then Rochelle is like, "Oh, now I'm in love with you." And
Mm-hmm.
Liz out loud said next to me, "What changed? Why does she like him now? Why is this working? This wouldn't work." And I was like, yeah, this is dumb. You're
Um,
right.
it's because low and slow.
I guess. But like,
Because here's one thing, I will defend the movie for one decision. One thing that did change is the second one sounded a lot better.
I will admit that when he slowed down, it sounded better.
Mm-hmm. But
But
other than that, he was harassing her by doing loud, noticeable music, and then he did different loud, noticeable music.
yeah, I don't know. Oh, I will say, as an addendum to my statement earlier about the only notable Cars lore, there's more. Specifically, I don't know if this will get you what you need, but try Plains Hinduism scene.
Yeah.
That's something.
They introduced that,
Why'd they
and
go
then
into?
a little bit later, they do have a what's it, carpet pull moment where they're like, "Oh, maybe Dusty's in the afterlife, about to be reincarnated."
Yeah, that was weird. That was it's very sudden.
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird. It's very the movie's weird and bad, and I don't like it. I don't like this movie. But I will hey, if we go another 100 episodes, we'll watch it again.
And
That's our promise.
they really want you to think of shoot, Ashani. They really want you to
Is
think of her
Shani,
as
yeah.
the bad guy. But she tells a competitor about a different way to go that was in fact a shortcut, but would require him to do the thing he would have had to do anyway, which was go over the Himalayas. That's it. She told him about a shortcut that was a shortcut, and the only thing is, she made it seem like he wouldn't have to go high, which he would have had to do anyway. The
And
only
like,
reason his life was at risk was because he did a stupid, dangerous thing rather than face his fear. So she helped him in a way he did not appreciate, and he reacted poorly, and she's the bad guy. Yes, the deception was bad, but it's not evil. It's poor sportsmanship.
yeah, and I understand that this logical line of thinking is not at all how phobias work, but the thing he did was so much scarier than a plane flying high. And again, I understand if you've got a phobia, it doesn't matter. Logic is not how that works. But
Yeah.
flying through a tight train tunnel with a train coming at you is so much more dangerous and scary. And also, I'll say again on Ishani's side, he also didn't like research it or look it up.
Oh,
Like
he's just a southern
he,
boy. He doesn't do that.
yeah, like he didn't do
Southern
any
boys are
preparation.
just dumb idiots who trust any and everything they hear from a pretty lady. That's how that worked.
Like look at a map.
Why would he
I don't
do
know.
that?
Like he didn't have to take the advice. Is
He didn't.
another big point. He didn't have to do it yet, and he didn't have to just trust it blindly. Like again, she purposely deceived him and was like bribed to do so. It's not good, but like I don't know, it was blown real out of proportion.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that she then gave up an extremely expensive propeller, she could have just given him her old one. It still would have been a
Yeah,
nice thing. It would have been nice, but like you you should feel bad for having deceived him. You should not feel bad that he reacted by doing something absolutely ludicrously insane.
yeah. I don't know. You got any more gas in the tank on this one, John?
A
Is
nitromethane gas?
oh yeah. Do you want to talk about the steroids, but cars?
Uh, I would, but also, why is why is he why is he so into planes?
Jug?
Yeah,
I
this is
guess when
this
you
feels really weird, but it seems like if we're going with the Dusty Crop Hopper is supposed to represent a minority in the situation, it seems like he's just the white friend who's super into the fact that his friend is black.
yeah, I could see that. I guess also, just to his credit, when you grow up in a place named Prop Wash Junction that is literally on a mountain and or hill shaped like a plane, I get it. It could happen.
This movie's so
I'm
bad.
calling it.
This
Yeah,
movie's
time of
so bad.
death right now.
Time of death when we watched the movie.
Yeah, final thoughts. I will say I think I built it up just a little bit worse than it was, but it not very much. It's bad and I don't like it as my least favorite of the five. But we'll see if that's true in 5 episodes when we watch Planes, Fire, and Rescue, another one that I do not care for very much at all.
And for me, it was this is technically a decent quality movie that is morally apprehensible.
Yeah. I don't, I'll even say, like, again, purely technically made, sure, but like storytelling, writing, humor, like
Oh,
all
you
the
can't count
non
creative.
technical parts fail too.
The
Uh,
creative technical, not so much. The like they
yeah,
did their job and they did like a uh I don't know, a technically good job, sure.
yeah,
But
okay,
yeah, hire a better creative team that isn't a bunch of I'm sure like no, I'm not sure. It's not this is not going to happen, but if I were to like look it up and find out that actually not a single successful white man wrote this, that would be shocking to me. But
yeah,
it
same
could be
here.
possible.
It could be. And if you are like, fuming mad right now if you're like, I love planes, and these two don't get it. I would honestly love to hear why. If you have passionate thoughts about the movie Planes, I would like to hear them. Even if you're also like us and you're like, man, you guys got hit the nail on the head. Is bad.
If you're passionate about any of these movies,
Yes. Or if you just want to say hi, you can also do that, and we like that. We like it when you do that, even if you don't have anything to say or give us content that we can steal and use for our podcast. And you can do that to our email, which is thekachat@gmail.com, or you can send it to our Twitter. You can tweet at us, DM us, or you just give us a quick follow. And that is our Twitter handle is at thekachat. And I didn't thank you for listening. How ungrateful of me, especially when, admittedly, this one is us being a couple sourpusses about a movie you've probably never seen for about an hour. So definitely
yeah.
thank you for listening to this episode. And also thank you for listening to any and all episodes. We really do appreciate y'all.
Hope we didn't bring down the holidays for you. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head when this one's coming out because we're pre-recording these. So anyway, John's gonna say his part now.
Remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell anyone and everyone you can about this kooky, quirky, strange little podcast. Rate and review because those could actually help us out. And until next time, remember to float like a Cadillac.
And sting like a beamer.